Daniel always walked through the door at 6:45 p.m. every single night. That evening, the teacups were still warm, the almond cookies untouched, but he never came home. I kept staring at the front door, almost willing the sound of his key in the lock. Nothing came. Only the kind of silence that seeps into your bones when something is gone for good. I kept my eyes on the front door longer than I cared to admit, almost willing the sound of his key in the lock. But there was nothing, just a heavy, settling silence, the kind that seeps into your bones when something is gone for good. My name's Lena Morgan, and for 14 years, I truly believed I had the kind of marriage people envied. Daniel was steady, accomplished, the sort of man who made a room feel anchored the second he stepped in. He never yelled, he was never late. On Sundays, he brought me flowers, he wore crisp, button-down shirts, and made sure I never had to worry about paying the mortgage. We didn't have children. Life just worked, like we were two puzzle pieces that fit perfectly. But what I didn't realize, what I was about to learn, was that our puzzle had missing pieces. One of them was hidden in a place I was never allowed to go. Daniel died on a Friday. They called it a heart attack. I can still see the doctor's face, kind, practiced, distant. Massive myocardial infarction, he said. Quick. That's how it happened, he told me. I nodded, like it mattered, like I understood, but it didn't. Not when you've just lost the only person you thought truly knew you. The funeral passed in a blur, black clothes, polite condolences, strangers telling me how wonderful my husband was. I clung to Claire, my best friend since college, as she kept pressing cups of water into my hands that I never drank, and food I couldn't eat. Then my sister, Sophie, showed up, her perfume cloying, her hug lingering too long, and something in me shifted. "I'm so sorry, sis," she whispered, her voice smooth. "Daniel was like a brother to me." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was something in her eyes that didn't look like grief. Later, in my kitchen, she poured herself a drink and said, "I know it's not the best time, but Daniel loaned me money. I was hoping we could settle that now since you're taken care of." I stared at her. "What money?" I asked. She blinked, then smiled like I was being ridiculous. "Oh, I guess he never told you." Something twisted deep inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the house, running my hands over the furniture like it could whisper its secrets. The bookshelves, the polished floors, the wedding photo that suddenly felt like it belonged to strangers. Then I noticed them. Daniel's keys, still sitting on the hallway table. I picked them up, and there it was. The key I was never allowed to use. Different from the rest. The two for his garage. I'd asked about it once, years ago. "Nothing interesting in there," he said with a smile. "Just tools, oil, grease. You wouldn't like it." I never pushed. That was our marriage. Easy, comfortable, and full of quiet spaces I didn't enter. But now, I had nothing to lose. The next morning, I drove to the garage. It was tucked away in the old industrial district, behind a row of crumbling buildings with rusted roofs and weeds breaking through cracked asphalt. Not the sort of place you'd expect a man like Daniel to keep anything. But he came here once a week, every Friday, like clockwork, and I never questioned it. The metal door was heavier than I expected. The key turned with a slow, reluctant groan. I stood there for a moment, afraid of what might be on the other side. The air smelled of dust and motor oil. I reached for the light switch and froze. This wasn't a garage. There were no tools, no boxes, no car parts. It was a shrine to a life I'd never known existed. I stepped in slowly. The fluorescent lights flickered to life, spilling pale light over the strangest room I'd ever seen. Every wall was covered. Photographs, newspaper clippings, hand-drawn charts, maps. One wall held rows of printed photos, pinned with meticulous care, and every two had Daniel in it. But not the Daniel I knew. In these, he wasn't in tailored suits or carrying that polished air. He looked different, relaxed, in worn jeans and casual shirts, his hair a little messy. His face was softer, his posture looser. And in nearly every photo, he stood beside the same woman. She was striking, at least 10 years younger than me, with dark hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. They were close. Too close. Her hand on his arm, his head turned to her with a smile I hadn't seen in years. In two shot, they were at the beach. In another, a ski lodge. Then two at a candlelit dinner. Some had handwritten dates on the back. 8 years ago, 5, 3, 2 from just a few months ago. July 2023. That, too, stopped me cold. Because that day, I'd been at home, cooking his favorite meal, waiting for him to come back from a client meeting. And now I was staring at a photograph of him with this woman and a man in his early 30s. The four of them looked happy, like a family. On the back, faintly, in Daniel's handwriting, Clara and Ethan, July 2023. My knees nearly gave out. I grabbed the metal desk in the center of the room to steady myself. That's when I saw the files stacked high. Bank transfers, corporate documents, letters from overseas companies, tax records that didn't match anything I knew about his business, and in one folder, a medical report. My eyes caught the header. Crescent Heart Institute. It was dated just over a month ago. Daniel's name at the top, followed by a diagnosis I could barely pronounce. Ischemic heart disease. Advanced, stage 3, high risk of cardiac arrest. He knew. He knew he was dying, and instead of telling me, instead of letting me prepare, he spent his last days living a secret life with another woman, another world, another child. Because that young man in the photo, he had to be their son. My stomach turned. 15 years I stood beside him, and now the man I buried wasn't really my husband. He was a stranger. A stranger who looked me in the eye the night before he died. He'd handed me a small velvet box with a sapphire necklace inside, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're the only one for me." I stumbled backward toward the door, unable to breathe. My chest felt tight, my thoughts spinning out. What was I supposed to do with this? Who even was I now? Yes, I was a widow. But of whom? That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Soft. Hesitant. The kind that try not to be heard. I spun around, my heart slamming against my ribs. Standing in the doorway was the young man from the photograph. Same dark hair, same sharp jawline, same intense, unreadable eyes. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but my pulse was pounding too hard for me to catch the words right away. Daniel Whittemore? He asked. I didn't respond. I thought you might come here, he said after a beat. I'm Ethan Calloway. Daniel Whittemore was my father. And just like that, it felt like the floor gave out beneath me. I can't even remember what I said first. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just stood there gripping the desk like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Ethan stepped closer, careful, like he knew the ground between us was fragile. I stared at him, searching, not just looking. There was no doubt. His eyes were Daniel's. That same unwavering gaze, that same silence that said more than words. You're really his son, I finally whispered. Yes, he said without hesitation. And I'm sorry, I never wanted you to find out this way. How long have you known about me? My voice was barely a breath. My whole life, he said, and there wasn't even a flicker of guilt. He didn't tell me much, only that he was married, that you didn't know. He kept us very separate. My mom, Clara, she respected that. She never wanted to interfere. But after she passed away last year, everything changed. Passed away. So she was gone too. Just like Daniel. My legs gave out and I dropped into the dusty chair by the desk. Why are you here? I asked. Why today? Ethan pulled a folded yellow document from his backpack and held it out. I hesitated before taking it. It's a draft of a will, unfinished, unofficial. My father gave it to me 1 week before he died. Said the official one would go to you. This one was just in case. I unfolded the paper and saw Daniel's familiar handwriting, steady loops like on birthday cards and dinner notes. It wasn't notarized, just scrawled lines dividing assets, mentioning Ethan, and referencing a company I'd never heard of, Mercury South Holdings. And 2 more things. Access to remaining documents secured in office vault. Code linked to personal item, gifted to V. I froze. Personal item, gifted to me. The necklace. The sapphire necklace he'd given me the night before he died wasn't just a gift. It was a key. My hand instinctively went to my collarbone, but the necklace wasn't there. I'd left it at home in its box, too heavy to wear. Now it felt heavier than ever. What is Mercury South Holdings? I asked, still scanning the page. One of his private firms, not public, not on paper. He used it to move money, internationally. After my mom died, I started digging. Found transfers I couldn't trace, offshore accounts in my name I never opened. I think he was trying to secure something. For you, for me, for both of us. Why? I asked, my throat dry. Because he knew his time was running out, and because he didn't trust the people he worked with. I looked up. What people? His expression darkened. He never said names, only that if anything happened to him, someone would come looking for information, for leverage, for whatever he left behind. I leaned back, my thoughts racing. Another safe, a company I'd never heard of, a necklace that might hold a code, and the man I'd loved for 14 years who'd built a life outside of mine. You're saying there's more, that the will, the files, the photos, they're just the beginning. Ethan nodded. I think he left things behind, not just for us, but to protect us. I rose slowly, my legs still shaky, and scanned the room 2 last times. It no longer felt like a shrine. It felt like evidence and a warning. I need to go home, I said, my voice hoarse. I need that necklace. Can I come with you? Ethan asked. If you'll let me. I paused, then nodded. Whether I wanted to or not, this was our story now. But I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. I needed time to think, to breathe. So I called Claire. Half an hour later, I was curled on her couch, hands wrapped around a mug of tea I didn't drink, the sapphire necklace resting on the table between us like a live grenade. Claire didn't press. She never did until I was ready. When I finally told her everything about the garage, the photos, Ethan, the will, she didn't say, "I told you so." She just squeezed my hand and whispered, "I'm so sorry." But I wasn't ready to cry. I wasn't ready to fall apart. I wanted answers. I wanted someone to blame. So I drove to Sophie's condo, a shiny new building in the North End. Underground parking, coded gates, concierge service. Strange perks for someone always complaining about money. My anger climbed with the elevator. She answered the door barefoot, silk pajamas clinging to her, a glass of wine in hand. Her makeup flawless, hair styled like she'd been expecting company. "Well, if it isn't my grieving sister, come to inspect the widow's inheritance," she said with a smug smile. "Cut the crap, Sophie," I snapped, brushing past her into the living room. "We need to talk." That's when I saw it, a framed photo on the mantel. Her and Daniel, laughing, champagne glasses raised. The date printed in the corner made my stomach turn. 5 years ago. What the hell is this? I demanded, pointing at it. Sophie strolled over, sipping her wine. "Oh, that. Company holiday party. You were too tired to come, remember? Daniel insisted I join him." She said it like it was nothing. Like sharing champagne with my husband while I stayed home folding laundry was perfectly normal. "We always got along so well," she said lightly, as much as she were reminiscing. I turned fully to face her. "How well, exactly?" Her smirk wavered. "I know about Clara," I said evenly. "I know about Ethan, about the garage, about the fake company, the will. I know it all." My voice was sharp enough to cut the air. "So if there's more, tell me now." Sophie's eyes narrowed. She moved to her liquor cart, topped off her glass, and set it down. Then, almost gently, she said, "Fine. You want the truth?" She placed a hand on her stomach. "I'm pregnant," she said, "and it's Daniel's." I didn't move. I didn't speak. My mind just shut down. 9 weeks, she went on. I found out earlier that day he died. He knew. Said he'd take care of everything. Even told me he was going to leave Clara soon. I froze. "You were still seeing him after Clara died?" Sophie gave a small shrug. She was never supposed to be permanent. I was the one who stayed. It was like I floated outside of my own body. The room, the walls, the furniture, the low elm of the fridge faded into a distant backdrop. "You slept with my husband," I whispered. Sophie shrugged again. "Don't act so shocked. You had your perfect little life, perfect house, perfect dinners at 7 o'clock. Meanwhile, I was scraping by, barely paying rent, working crap jobs, listening to Mom compare us like I was some failed version of you. Then Daniel started showing up, helping me, listening. You were his routine. I was his escape." The slap landed before I even knew my hand had moved. Sophie's head jerked to the side, her wine glass shattering on the floor. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just smiled. "Now there's the real Lena," she said. "Not the prim, perfect wife. The woman who's just learned her life's been a lie." I turned away, breathing hard, my hands trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked softer now. "Because you never would have believed me," she replied. "You always thought I was jealous. And maybe I was. But this wasn't about you. It was about me finally getting something for myself." I shook my head. "You didn't just take something. You stole everything." She stepped closer, her face unreadable. "Say what you want. But that baby inside me, he or she are your family, whether you like it or not." My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to rewind time. Instead, I said, "I'll honor what Daniel left in his will. Not for you, for the baby, because they didn't ask for this mess." Sophie blinked, her tone softening for the first time. "You mean that?" "I don't know what I mean," I whispered. "But I do know this. I need to leave." I walked to the door. ignoring the crunch of glass beneath my shoes. My fingers trembled on the handle. Behind me, she called, "You think I'm the worst thing Daniel did?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure anymore. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't stand the thought of walking into that house with its perfectly arranged plates and an untouched bed. Instead, I went back to Claire's, clutching the sapphire necklace so tightly it felt like it might burn a hole through my palm. She didn't ask where I'd been. She just opened the door, took 2 looks at me, and said, "You need sleep." But I couldn't sleep, not when every thought in my head was collapsing in on itself. The next morning, Ethan picked me up. Claire came too, insisting. "You're not walking into your husband's secret vault without backup," she said, tossing on her coat. Daniel's office was in a downtown high-rise. He'd always called it a satellite space, just somewhere for private meetings. I'd never been inside, but Ethan had a key card. "He's listed as co-owner," he said, swiping us through security. The receptionist barely looked up. Daniel had compartmentalized his life so neatly, no 2 needed explanations. The elevator ride felt endless. On the 15th floor, Ethan led us into a glass-walled office with sleek, cold furniture and no hint of warmth. No photos of me, no framed moments, just minimalist surfaces, gray walls, and the faint scent of a cologne I didn't recognize. "There," he said, pointing to an oversized abstract painting behind the desk. "The safe's behind that." I reached into my bag for the necklace. My fingers found the tiny clasp, twisting it counterclockwise. Click. A hidden compartment popped open on the back of the sapphire pendant. Inside was a thin metal plate, no bigger than a SIM card, with numbers etched into the edge. Ethan slid it into the safe's keypad. A low beep. The lock disengaged. Inside, stacks of documents, a sleek black flash drive, a small wooden box, and a single silver key with a tag reading Bank Safe Deposit Federal Trust. Ethan grabbed the papers. Contracts, transfers, bank statements. Some of these are from international banks. He wasn't just hiding money. He was moving it, offshore, quickly. I picked up the flash drive, but didn't connect it. Not yet. Then I opened the wooden box. Inside was a ring. Simple gold band, small diamond. My breath caught. It wasn't mine. Inside the band, N. Always. Not V. Not me. N for Clara. "Jesus," Claire whispered. Ethan looked away, his jaw tight. "I bought her a ring," I murmured. My voice was barely audible. He was going to propose. Or maybe he already had. I stood frozen, unable to cry, unable to move. Because there, in the sterile quiet of my dead husband's office, I finally named the truth I'd been avoiding. He loved her. Maybe he'd loved me too, in his own way. But her? She had the part of him that was real, the part that smiled in photos, took vacations, laughed without restraint. And me, I'd been given the performance, the polished husband, the Sunday roses, the dinner at 7, the safe full of secrets. Then Ethan handed me a neatly folded letter with my name on the front. I opened it with shaking hands. "Lena, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry. I never had the courage to tell you the truth, to say out loud what I should have said years ago. I was selfish. I built 2 lives because I couldn't give up either. And in the end, it cost me everything. I loved you. I know that sounds empty now. Maybe it always did. But I did, in the only way I knew how. I wanted you to have peace, to be safe. That's why I left you the papers, the access, the truth. Use them however you see fit. Burn them, bury them, or expose it all. It's your choice now. Forgive me if you can. If not, I understand. Daniel." I stared at the page until the words bled together, then handed it to Claire. She read without a sound and passed it to Ethan. He didn't speak either. None of us did. What could we possibly say? The man we thought we knew had shattered like glass, and now all we could do was decide what to do with the sharp, dangerous pieces left behind. We left the office in silence. Not the kind born from peace, but the kind left behind when there's nothing worth saying. Claire drove. Ethan sat beside me. I stared out the window, Charleston, passing in muted shades of autumn gray. My dead husband had lived a life I'd never touched, and now I held fragments of it in my hands, not knowing who else might be watching. That night, lying on Claire's pull-out couch, I tried to sleep. The phone rang. Unknown number. Lena Morgan? Yes. My guard was already up. This is Harvey Grant. I was a business associate of your husband's. My stomach dropped. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, he said, voice calm as still water. The documents from the safe. Some of them concern international transfers and accounts I helped set up. I suggest we meet. I'm not meeting anyone. You will, he replied, because the other people Daniel worked with, they're not as polite as I am. They don't ask. He hung up. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. In the morning, I told Ethan. His jaw tightened as he paced the room. He contacted me too, he said. But there's more. He handed me a slip of paper. Julian Cross. Says he's the original source of the funds Daniel moved. Told me if we don't return everything by the end of the week, there will be consequences. I didn't need to ask what that meant. Ethan pulled the silver key from the safe. We still have the deposit box. Whatever's in there might explain who really owns what. But do we really want to open another box? I asked, my voice straining not to crack. Claire sat beside me. Then at least you'll know. The not knowing is what's killing you. She was right. So, we made a plan. First the bank. Then, if we still didn't understand, we'd find someone who did. Daniel had to have a fallback, a contact, someone who knew exactly what he was tangled in. That's when Ethan spoke up. There's a name my mother mentioned once. Robert Keaton, Dad's old college friend. She said he was the only two who ever told Daniel the truth, even when he didn't want to hear it. Do you know where he is? I think so. Mom had his address in Savannah in a box of emergency contacts. We drove 2.5 hours in near silence, rain sliding down the windshield like streaks of memory. Savannah greeted us with oak trees, damp air, and that slow, heavy quiet only old towns carry. Robert lived in a tall brick house draped in ivy, like something out of a forgotten novel. He opened the door without hesitation. You're Lena, and you must be Ethan. You knew we'd come, I asked. He nodded. Daniel told me, if it all falls apart, you'd find me. He stepped aside. Come in. The house smelled of paper and pipe smoke. Bookshelves lined the walls. A polished piano sat in the corner. Robert motioned for us to sit, then left the room. He came back with a sealed envelope. He left this with me, said to open it only if both of you showed up together. I glanced at Ethan. He gave a small nod. I broke the seal. Inside was a short handwritten note and a second will. But this too was different. It named Sophie's unborn child, assigning 30% of Daniel's unspecified offshore savings to be held in trust until the child turned 22. The blood drained from my face. He'd planned for everything, even this. And it hit me then. We were standing in the middle of a storm Daniel had built brick by brick, and it was ours to survive. I stared at the page again until the words bled together. unborn child of Sophie Whitmore, 25%, held in trust until age 22. It wasn't the money that stunned me. It was the precision. Why name the baby but not Sophie? I asked. Because he trusted the child, Robert said gently, not the mother. Ethan leaned forward. That means Sophie can't touch the money. Not legally. And if she tries? I asked. Robert nodded toward the flash drive. Then you use that. Daniel told me it holds records of every transfer, every partner, every crime it took to build this thing. If they push you, you push back. Claire exhaled. You have leverage. For the first time since Daniel died, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the woman left in the dark. I felt like the two holding the blueprint. And that was power. Ethan met my eyes. Lena, we need to stop reacting. We make the next move, before Harvey or Crane does. I nodded. We go to the bank. Back in Charleston, late morning, we pulled up to the Federal Trust Building, tucked between a law office and a historic inn. The kind of place you'd walk past dozens of times without noticing. Until it mattered. Claire stayed in the car. Text me if it gets weird, and if they don't let you in, cry. No two says no to a woman crying at a bank. Ethan smirked. I didn't. Inside, the vault manager inspected the silver key, checked my ID, and raised an eyebrow. It's been years since anyone accessed this box, registered under a corporate shield. Mercury South Holdings. He led us deep into the basement, past security doors and thick concrete walls. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. Finally, we stood alone with the box. He handed me gloves. Standard procedure. You'll have privacy. The door closed behind us. My fingers hovered over the lock. Ready? Ethan asked. No, I told him. But I did it anyway. The key turned without a hitch. I slid the box out. No cash inside. No passports, no burner phones. No neat stacks of untraceable bills. Just a manila folder and a photograph. The picture showed Daniel, Ethan, and Harvey Grant in front of a black SUV, arms crossed, laughing, and behind them stood Julian Cross. I stared at it for what felt like forever. They weren't just business partners, I murmured. They were a team. Ethan opened the folder. Dozens of signed contracts, shell company registrations, payoffs, and 2 documents stamped in bold red letters. Crane Blackmail Insurance. This wasn't just leverage. It was a loaded gun. Daniel kept proof, I whispered, of everything. And in that moment, I got it. He hadn't just left me a mess. He'd left me a weapon. Now I had to decide where to point it. We didn't go home. We went straight to the lawyer. His name was Peter Langford, the man who'd handled my father's estate years ago. Steady, discreet, allergic to drama. I told him everything. Almost. Not about the affair, not about Sophie, just the parts that mattered legally. The documents, the threats, the offshore accounts. He didn't flinch. Do you want to press charges? He asked. No, I said. I want insurance. He nodded once. Then we'll copy everything, digitally and on paper. Backups in 4 places. 1 here, 1 with me, and 2 with someone completely unconnected to me. I know just the person, Claire said, a grim smile on her face. We spent hours scanning files. Daniel had kept meticulous records. Names, dates, wire logs, fake invoices. This wasn't just shady business. It was full-scale criminal enterprise. International. And with Daniel gone, they figured the evidence was gone too. They were wrong. By the day's end, Peter had drafted a simple letter. At the bottom, I added my own line in handwriting. Try me. VC. We sent it to Harvey Grant's office by courier. He called in 15 minutes. "You think you're clever," he hissed. "You're in over your head." "No," I answered evenly. "You are, because my next call is to the IRS, and after that, Interpol." Silence. Then a low chuckle. "All right," he said. "What do you want?" "Nothing," I told him. "Just stop." No calls, no threats, no late-night warnings. You lay a finger on me or anyone I care about, and that folder goes public. Every page, every signature. "You don't want that kind of trouble," he warned. "I already have it," I said. "The difference is, I'm not scared anymore." He hung up. 2 hours later, Julian Cross called. His voice was smooth, polished, like a man used to talking his way through locked doors. "Lena," he said warmly, like we were old friends, "I've heard about your discoveries. I think we're starting off on the wrong foot." "There is no foot," I replied, "just your name on a dozen illegal transfers." He chuckled softly. "All hypothetical, of course." I let the silence linger. Then I said, "I know you think you can control this, but here's the thing, Mr. Crane. I have nothing left to lose. No company to protect, no reputation to salvage, and that makes me very, very dangerous." That shut him up. I ended the call. That night, Ethan and I sat on Claire's porch. He had the flash drive in his pocket. Another copy of the folder was buried in the planter box behind us. Paranoid? Maybe. But after being lied to by the person you trusted most, paranoia feels like survival. "We didn't know he was capable of all this," Ethan said quietly. "My mom always said he was complicated. I thought she meant sad, not corrupt. He was both, and probably worse." I stared at the cold, steady stars above us. We're not done yet. There's 2 things we haven't opened. Ethan frowned. "What?" "The flash drive. Small, black, unmarked. Like it had nothing to reveal unless you asked the right way." We didn't touch it that night, or the next morning. It took me 3 days. 2 days of bracing for whatever truth still waited. 2 days of rehearsing my reactions, like practice could dull the sting of betrayal. Ethan sat beside me. On the couch, Claire brought tea. No 2 spoke as I plugged it in. A single folder appeared. For Lena inside. 1 video file, dated 12 days before Daniel died. My fingers hesitated, then clicked. The screen went black, then flickered. Daniel. Not the man in our wedding photos, not the 2 across from me at dinner. This Daniel was hollow, eyes tired, shirt rumpled like he hadn't slept in weeks. He leaned forward. "Lena, if you're watching this, I didn't make it. Or maybe I just ran out of time." He sighed, rubbing his face. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just say it. You were never the 2 I needed to hide things from. You were the 2 I wanted to protect. But I waited too long, and now everything's closing in." He paused. "There's someone you need to watch out for. Someone you trust more than you should." My heart slowed down. He stared straight at the camera. "It's Sophie." The room froze. It wasn't just someone I slipped up with. It wasn't that simple. She planned this from the start. The pregnancy wasn't an accident. The night I told her I couldn't keep going, she changed. Said if I left, she'd go public about the money, the shell accounts, everything I'd buried to keep you safe. He leaned closer. "I think she killed Clara." My mouth went dry. "I can't prove it," Daniel said, "but the timing was too perfect. Clara had just packed. She told me she booked a nonstop ticket to Lisbon. Then the car crash. 1 vehicle, no witnesses. They said the brakes failed, but she'd had the car serviced earlier that day. He stared into the lens, his voice shaking. Sophie knew she was pregnant. Clara didn't. That changed everything. They called it an accident, no foul play, but Sophie knew, and Clara didn't. Claire covered her mouth. Ethan's hands curled into fists. I tried to fix it, Daniel said. I moved the money, made backups, made sure that if anything happened to me, you'd have the power to act. I'm sorry it took this much damage for me to finally do the right thing. He looked away, then back again. I was weak. But you're not. And if you want to walk away from all of this, then walk. Take what's yours and leave them choking on the dust behind you. But if you don't, if you choose to fight, don't do it alone. The video froze, then went dark. I stayed there, still a stone, for what felt like hours. He knew. He knew exactly what Sophie was capable of. He saw what was coming, and even then, he tried to steer the story from beyond the grave. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear. But now he'd placed the truth in my hands, and it was my turn to decide what to do with it. Sophie had no idea I'd seen the video. Not when I invited her to brunch. Not when I wrapped my arms around her at the door. Told her how much I'd missed her. Said we should start talking again, like real sisters. She smiled. The smile of a woman convinced she'd won. She wore a pale blue dress that fit snug around her belly. He kicks when I drink orange juice, she said with a little laugh, rubbing her stomach. I smiled back, but my eyes stayed cold. We sat on Claire's porch. Ethan stayed inside. Claire poured sweet tea, set it down, and left us. I'm glad you reached out, Sophie said, folding her hands neatly in her lap. I was worried you were angry. Why would I be angry? I asked softly. Because my husband was sleeping with my sister? Or because he left you a piece of the inheritance? Sophie blinked. The first crack. She shifted. Lena, this is hard for both of us. Daniel was confused, torn, but he loved you. No, I cut in. He didn't love me. He pitied me. Sophie flinched. I leaned forward. And he feared you. Her face went still. I set the flash drive down between us. Her lips parted just slightly. I know about the accounts, the manipulation. I know he was going to leave you. And I know about Clara. She didn't blink, didn't move, just said, you can't prove anything. Right. I don't have to. Her brows tightened. I stood. Because I'm not going to court. I'm not pressing charges. I'm not trusting a half-broken justice system to fix this. I met her gaze. I'm walking away and leaving you here with every single thing you thought you wanted. The money, the child, the lies. Sophie rose to her feet. You think that scares me? No, but it will. Then I turned and walked inside, where Ethan waited. That afternoon, I met with Peter Langford again. I gave him the flash drive, a signed affidavit, and 2 instructions. If anything happens to me, it all goes to the press. Every word, every file. Then I went back to the house Daniel and I once shared. It was quiet now. I wandered through each room, my fingers tracing the backs of chairs, the door frames, the little cracks in the floorboards we never fixed. I opened the closet, packed 2 suitcases, and left the rest. In the garage, I locked the door behind me, not to hide anything, but because I knew I wasn't coming back. A week later, I boarded a flight to Colorado. Fresh air, a new name on the lease, a tiny cottage tucked near the mountains. No secrets, no safes, no more pretending. Just me, Lena Morgan. Widow, survivor. Not the woman left in the dark, but the one who learned to make silence speak.